Ladies and gentlemen, imagine waking up one morning with no idea where you are going, no map, no guide, and no plan. Just stepping out into the unknown, hoping everything will work out. It sounds unsettling, doesn't it? Yet, this is exactly how many people begin their day. They wake up, reach for their phones, check the news, scroll through social media, and rush into their schedules without a moment to pause and seek direction. They step into the world with their own ideas, their own worries, and their own strength, believing they have everything under control. But do they? How many times have plans unraveled despite careful preparation? How often has anxiety crept in even when things seem secure? How many decisions have been made in haste only to lead to regret? Life is unpredictable, full of twists and turns, and no amount of human effort can guarantee success, peace, or certainty. That is why seeking God's guidance each morning is not just a good habit, it is a necessity. Before the rush of the day begins, before decisions are made and paths are taken, there is a moment to pause, to listen, and to surrender. That moment changes everything. It is the difference between wandering aimlessly and walking with purpose, between striving in fear and moving forward in faith. Each morning as the sun rises, a silent battle unfolds in the human heart. It is the struggle between our will and the divine purpose set before us. There is something deeply ingrained in our nature that resists surrender, something that tells us we must be the masters of our own fate. Society celebrates independence, self-sufficiency, and control. From the moment we wake up, our minds are often preoccupied with plans, expectations, and ambitions. We are driven by a need to take charge, to determine our own path, to carve our own way forward. Yet, despite our best efforts, we frequently find ourselves confronted with the limits of our understanding. Life has an uncanny way of unraveling even the most carefully constructed plans. The unforeseen interrupts our expectations, and the unpredictable reshapes our course. A sudden disappointment, an unexpected challenge, or an insurmountable obstacle reminds us that we do not have the power we often assume we do. It is in these moments that we come face to face with the truth. Our control is an illusion, and our wisdom is limited. Surrendering to God each morning is not an admission of weakness. It is an act of wisdom. It is the recognition that we are finite beings with a limited perspective, while God is infinite and all-knowing. He sees the entirety of our journey, not just the steps before us. He knows where the hidden pitfalls lie, where the unmarked roads lead, and where the dangers lurk beyond our vision. It is to say, I do not know what this day holds, but you do. Lead me. True surrender does not mean passivity. It is not an excuse for inaction or an abandonment of responsibility. Rather, it is a posture of trust. It is a shift in perspective, from striving to abiding, from controlling to yielding. It means making plans but holding them loosely. It means setting goals, but being willing to adjust them according to God's direction. It means stepping forward in faith, trusting that if the path changes, it is because He is guiding us towards something greater. Morning surrender shapes the entire day ahead. It affects the way we respond to challenges, the way we interact with others, and the way we navigate decisions. Instead of being overwhelmed by anxiety, we move forward with peace. Instead of reacting out of fear, we respond with confidence. Instead of being burdened by the weight of uncertainty, we rest in the assurance that God is leading the way. It requires humility to surrender. The human heart resists dependence, preferring self-reliance to trust, but the paradox of surrender is that it brings freedom. When we release our grip on control, we find that we are no longer enslaved by the pressure to figure everything out on our own. We discover the deep and abiding peace that comes from knowing that we are not alone in our journey. Each morning, as the sun rises, we awaken to a world beyond our control. The day ahead is unwritten, filled with possibilities, challenges, and uncertainties. Yet, In our human nature, there is a deep-seated desire to take charge, to plan meticulously, and to believe that we hold the reins of our own destiny. Society reinforces this mindset, encouraging independence, self-sufficiency, and personal ambition. We are taught that control equates to power, that our own wisdom is enough to navigate the complexities of life. Despite our best efforts, reality often contradicts this belief. Even the most carefully designed plans can unravel in an instant. An unexpected event, a sudden setback, or an unforeseen challenge can disrupt the course we have set for ourselves. These moments serve as stark reminders of our limitations, forcing us to confront the truth that we are not as in control as we assume. No amount of preparation can account for the unknown, and no level of personal strength can guarantee success. Surrendering to God each morning is not a sign of weakness, but an act of wisdom. It is the conscious acknowledgement that we are finite beings with a limited perspective, while God is infinite and all-knowing. His vision extends beyond what we can see, encompassing the past, present, and future. He understands the hidden dangers along our path, the unseen opportunities that await, and the lessons that will shape us. By seeking His guidance, we align our steps with a greater purpose, one that transcends our own understanding. This act of surrender does not negate personal responsibility. It does not mean passivity, complacency, or a lack of effort. Instead, it is a posture of trust, a shift from striving to abiding. It means making plans with a heart willing to change course if God leads in a different direction. It means pursuing goals with diligence while remaining open to His redirection. It means recognizing that His ways are higher than ours, even when they do not align with our expectations. When we surrender, our perspective shifts. Instead of facing the day with anxiety, we step forward with peace. Instead of reacting to obstacles with frustration, we approach them with faith. Instead of being burdened by the pressure to control every detail, we rest in the assurance that God is in control. This shift allows us to live with greater freedom, unshackled from the fear of uncertainty. It enables us to embrace the unknown, knowing that we are being led by the One who sees the end from the beginning. Humility is essential for surrender. It requires the recognition that our strength is insufficient, that our wisdom is incomplete, and that our best efforts will always fall short without divine guidance. The human heart resists this dependence, clinging to the illusion of control. Yet, it is in surrender that we find true strength. The paradox is that in yielding, we gain stability. In releasing our grip, we receive something far greater than what we could hold on our own. In trusting God, we discover a peace that surpasses understanding, a confidence that does not waver in the face of uncertainty. Each day, from the moment we wake, we stand at a crossroads. On one side is the path shaped by our desires, ambitions, and carefully constructed plans. On the other is the path that God calls us to walk, often unseen, sometimes uncertain, yet always guided by a wisdom greater than our own. The tension between these two paths is the very essence of the human struggle, the battle between our will and God's will. Human nature is wired for autonomy. From childhood, we are taught to dream, to set goals, to take control of our own destiny. The world praises self-made success, celebrates independence, and elevates personal choice as the highest good. We instinctively believe that we know what is best for ourselves, that our understanding is sufficient to navigate life's complexities. Even when we acknowledge God, there is a temptation to ask Him to bless our plans rather than surrender them entirely to His direction. Yet, history and personal experience repeatedly show the limitations of human wisdom. Plans that seemed foolproof unravel unexpectedly. Dreams pursued with relentless ambition leave an emptiness that was never anticipated. What once appeared to be a promising opportunity sometimes leads to regret. These moments, though painful, serve as reminders that our vision is limited, our knowledge incomplete, and our understanding flawed. What we desire is not always what is best, and what seems right in our own eyes may lead us away from the very life God intends for us. God's will, though often mysterious, is never aimless. He sees the entirety of our existence, the past that shaped us, the present that challenges us, and the future that awaits us. His plans are woven with purpose, designed not only for our benefit, but also for a greater story beyond ourselves. When He redirects our steps, it is not to deprive us, but to protect us. When He closes a door, it is not to withhold good, but to guide us towards something greater than we could have imagined. The struggle arises because His ways rarely align with our immediate expectations. The path He calls us to walk is often one of patience, trust, and surrender, qualities that run contrary to the urgency of human desire. There is an undeniable wrestle within the soul when God's will leads in a direction different from what was planned. It requires humility to lay down personal ambitions, faith to trust in the unseen, and courage to step forward without full understanding. The conflict is not a sign of failure, but of growth. It is in this struggle that the heart is refined, the character is shaped, and the dependence on God deepens. The cost of following God's will is real, but so is the cost of resisting it. The pursuit of self-will often leads to frustration, disappointment, and an unfulfilled longing for something more. What appears to be freedom can become a burden, as the weight of self-sufficiency grows heavier with each misstep. God, in His mercy, does not force His way upon anyone, but patiently calls, invites, and waits for a willing heart to trust Him more than their own understanding. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless demands for attention, hearing the voice of God requires a different kind of listening. Society thrives on volume, bold headlines, urgent notifications, constant entertainment, and the pressure to respond quickly. People are conditioned to seek clarity in loud declarations, yet God's voice does not compete with the clamor. It does not demand attention through force, but instead calls softly, waiting for those who are willing to quiet their hearts long enough to listen. Throughout history, God has spoken in various ways, through prophets, scripture, creation, and even direct encounters. Yet the pattern remains consistent. His voice is often found in stillness rather than spectacle. When the prophet Elijah sought to hear from God, he did not find Him in the powerful wind, the earthquake, or the fire. Instead, he heard Him in a gentle whisper. This reveals something profound about God's nature. He does not impose Himself upon those who are unwilling to seek Him. His guidance is offered, not forced, and His wisdom is available to those who choose to listen. The challenge is that human nature gravitates toward immediate answers and unmistakable signs. People long for clarity that removes all doubt, for a voice so unmistakable that obedience feels effortless. But God often leads through a quiet prompting, a deep sense of peace, or an inner conviction that requires discernment. His guidance rarely comes as a dramatic revelation, but rather as a steady assurance that aligns with His truth. Recognizing His voice requires spiritual sensitivity, cultivated through time spent in prayer, scripture, and contemplation. Silence is uncomfortable in a culture accustomed to busyness. The human mind is restless, quick to fill every quiet moment with thoughts, plans, and anxieties. But it is in the stillness that God's voice is most clearly heard, just as a whisper can only be understood when all other noise is quieted. God's direction often becomes evident when distractions are set aside. Seeking His voice requires intentional space, time away from the rush, moments of solitude, and a willingness to pause before speaking or acting. One of the greatest barriers to hearing God is the assumption that He is silent simply because He does not speak in the expected way. Many miss His voice not because He is absent, but because they are listening for something different. His guidance does not always come with dramatic certainty, but often through the unfolding of circumstances, the wisdom of others, and the quiet conviction placed upon the heart. Learning to recognize his leading involves trust. Trust that he is speaking even when his voice is not immediately clear. Trust that he is near even when he seems distant. Responding to God's quiet voice requires more than just hearing, it requires obedience. Recognizing his leading but failing to follow it results in stagnation, while those who respond in faith find themselves shaped by his wisdom. Trusting his voice, even when it contradicts personal desires, leads to peace, direction, and a life aligned with his greater purpose. Each morning presents a new journey, filled with unknowns, challenges, and decisions that shape the course of the day. Just as a traveler would not venture into unfamiliar territory without a map, a believer cannot navigate life effectively without divine guidance. Prayer and scripture serve as the compass and roadmap, providing direction, wisdom, and strength. They are not merely religious rituals, but essential tools for aligning the heart and mind with God's will. Prayer is the conversation between the soul and God. It is not a mechanical recitation of words, but an intimate exchange where thoughts, burdens, and desires are laid before the one who understands them fully. Through prayer, a person acknowledges dependence on God, surrendering personal plans and seeking his direction. It is in these moments of humility that the heart is softened, making it receptive to the guidance that would otherwise be overlooked in the noise of daily life. Prayer is not about changing God's will to fit human desires, but about transforming the human heart to align with his perfect plan. Scripture, on the other hand, is God's written voice, a timeless revelation of his character, his promises, and his instructions for life. It is not simply a collection of historical accounts or moral teachings, but a living word that speaks directly to the soul. Through Scripture, wisdom is imparted, correction is given, and the foundation of faith is strengthened. The more one immerses in its truths, the clearer God's direction becomes. It serves as a lamp unto the feet, illuminating the right path in moments of uncertainty. Together, prayer and scripture create a cycle of divine communication. Prayer opens the heart to hear God, while scripture provides the answers he has already given. Many seek God's guidance, yet neglect the very words he has spoken. They ask for direction, but fail to study the principles he has laid out. The more one engages with scripture, the more naturally the mind aligns with God's perspective, making decisions with greater clarity and confidence. In a world that constantly pulls in different directions, prayer and scripture provide stability. Without them, emotions, circumstances, and external influences dictate actions, leading to confusion and inconsistency. With them, decisions are rooted in eternal truth rather than fleeting opinions. The discipline of starting each day with both is not a burden but a source of strength, equipping the soul to face whatever may come. Prayer is also a means of recalibrating the heart throughout the day. It is not limited to the morning, but can be a continual dialogue with God, inviting Him into every moment. The more one practices this habit, the more natural it becomes to seek His presence in all things. Scripture, likewise, is not a one-time reference, but a continual wellspring of truth that renews the mind and spirit. When these two practices are neglected, the result is often spiritual dryness, uncertainty, and a sense of distance from God. The struggle of self-reliance grows, and the clarity that comes from divine wisdom fades. But when they are prioritized, they become the source of peace, direction, and an unshakable foundation. From the moment a person wakes up, there is a quiet yet persistent belief that today's challenges can be handled with enough effort, intelligence, and planning. Society reinforces this mindset, praising independence, self-made success, and the ability to forge one's own path. The world teaches that reliance on others is a weakness, that true strength comes from standing alone, and that the best way to navigate life is through personal determination. This illusion of self-sufficiency is deeply ingrained, yet it is one of the greatest deceptions that keeps people from experiencing the fullness of God's wisdom and guidance. Self-sufficiency promises control, but it delivers anxiety. When a person believes they must handle everything on their own, the weight of responsibility becomes overwhelming. There is pressure to make the right decisions, avoid failure, and secure the future without error. This creates a cycle of striving, where rest is rare and peace is fleeting. The need to be in control becomes exhausting, as every outcome feels entirely dependent on personal ability. Yet, despite the effort, unexpected obstacles arise, plans unravel, and circumstances shift beyond human control. These moments expose the limitations of self-reliance, revealing that no amount of preparation can account for the uncertainties of life. God never designed human beings to live independently of Him. From the beginning, mankind was created to be in constant communion with the Creator, walking in daily dependence on His wisdom, strength, and provision. The idea that a person can navigate life alone is not a sign of strength, but of misunderstanding. True wisdom comes in recognizing that human knowledge is limited, while God's understanding is infinite. What may seem like the best path from a personal perspective may lead to unseen difficulties, while the way God directs often unfolds with perfect purpose, even when it is not immediately understood. There is a false sense of security in personal achievements, wealth, and intellect. When life is going well, it is easy to believe that success is self-made, that discipline and effort have secured stability. Yet one unexpected crisis, a loss, a failure, a sudden change, can dismantle everything in an instant. In these moments, the truth becomes undeniable. Human strength is fragile, and control is an illusion. The only true security comes from placing trust in the One who holds all things together, who sees the unseen, and who knows the future before it unfolds. Dependence on God is not passive resignation, but an active choice to seek His wisdom above personal understanding. It requires humility to acknowledge that His ways are higher, His knowledge deeper, and His plans greater than anything that can be constructed alone. Surrendering self-sufficiency does not mean abandoning responsibility. Rather, it means aligning decisions with God's direction, allowing His guidance to shape the course of each day. It means beginning the morning not with the weight of self-reliance, but with the assurance that strength comes from Him, wisdom is found in Him, and true success is rooted in walking according to His will. Every morning, as the day begins, the heart is met with a choice, whether to step forward in trust or to be held back by fear. Fear is a powerful force, shaping decisions, limiting potential, and clouding the ability to see beyond the immediate challenges. It whispers doubts, magnifies uncertainties, and convinces the mind that the unknown is something to be avoided rather than embraced. Yet, at the core of faith is trust, a trust that God is sovereign, that His plans are good, and that He leads with wisdom beyond human understanding. Fear thrives in the absence of trust. It takes root when the mind is filled with what-ifs, speculating on worst-case scenarios, focusing on what could go wrong rather than what God has promised. It grips tightly when circumstances seem unstable, when answers are unclear, and when control feels out of reach. It makes bold claims that security is only found in personal control, that risk is too dangerous. Yet, Scripture repeatedly calls for a different response, one that moves beyond the limitations of fear and into the certainty of divine guidance. Trust is not built in a single moment, but cultivated daily. It grows through experience, through witnessing God's faithfulness in small things, before relying on Him for greater things. It is strengthened by remembering how He has provided in the past, how He has led through difficulty, and how His presence has never failed. The more one looks back on God's unwavering faithfulness, the more confidence grows in His ability to guide the present and the future. Walking in trust does not mean the absence of uncertainty. It does not guarantee that every step will be clear, that challenges will not arise, or that difficulties will be removed. But it does mean that fear does not have the final say. It means recognizing that God's wisdom surpasses human understanding and that His plans unfold with purpose even when they do not immediately make sense. Trust allows movement forward even when the path is unfamiliar, because the confidence is not in personal ability but in God's direction. The choice to trust each morning sets the tone for the entire day. It determines whether decisions are made from a place of confidence or from hesitation. It influences whether obstacles are faced with faith or avoided out of fear. Trust does not ignore reality. It acknowledges that the challenges are real, but that God's presence is greater. It replaces anxiety with peace, uncertainty with assurance, and hesitation with boldness. Fear always seeks to control, to keep the heart focused on risks and dangers rather than on God's provision. It discourages obedience, convincing the soul to wait for absolute certainty before moving forward. Trust, however, embraces the unknown, not because the details are clear, but because God's character is unchanging. It refuses to let temporary circumstances dictate the course of life, and instead chooses to believe that God is guiding every step, even when the full picture has not yet been revealed. Each morning is a gift, an opportunity to reset, to realign, and to seek the wisdom that only God can provide. The world encourages self-sufficiency, personal ambition, and the illusion of control, yet true peace is found in surrendering to God's guidance. It is in that surrender that the weight of uncertainty is lifted, where fear is replaced with trust, and where decisions are no longer made based on limited human understanding, but on the unshakable foundation of divine wisdom.